I'll call on the member for Georgetown West to say prayers.
Good morning, all. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Parliament now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations for the glory of thy name and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth II, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established amongst us. Especially we pray for the governor of our islands, the Speaker of the Parliament, official members and ministers of cabinet, and members of the Parliament, the Chief Justice and members of the judiciary, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for thy great name's sake. Let us pray the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us, and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us, and give us peace now and always. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Proceedings of this Honourable Parliament are now resumed.
Administration of oaths or affirmations?
None.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker of messages and announcements?
None.
Presentation of petitions?
None.
Presentation of papers and of reports. Segregated Insurance Fund of the Cayman Islands, report to those charged with governance on the 2020 audit. 1st of April 2021, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness and Home Affairs.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. Under Section 11.4 of the Health Insurance Commission Act 2016 revision, I am pleased to lay on the table for this Honourable Parliament the audited financial statement of the Segregated Insurance Fund of the Cayman Islands, governance on the 2020 audit to 1st of April 2021.
So ordered. Is the Minister speaking?
No, I will not, but thank you.
Thank you.
Cayman Islands Government, an audited quarterly financial report, 3 months period, ended 31st of March 2020, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Honourable Deputy Premier, Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
Morning, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. On behalf of the government, Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the Parliament the unaudited quarterly financial report for the core government of the Cayman Islands for the 3-month period ended the 31st of March 2022.
So ordered. Is the Minister speaking to the report?
Briefly, Mr. Speaker. I knew it was going to happen. Mr. Speaker, On the 11th of May 2022, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development arranged for the gazettal of the unaudited quarterly financial report for core government of the Cayman Islands for the period 31st of March, at the end of the 31st of March, and this gazette was done on the 11th of May, which is within the 6 weeks after the year, after the end of the quarter results that was actually required. Mr. Speaker, since this is already in the press and we already have a lot of information out there, I will be brief with my remarks, but I just wanted to touch on a few highlights of the report, with your permission, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the statement of financial position as of the 31st of March 2022 on page 7 of the document shows that the core government ended the period with $3.1 billion in total assets, $1 billion in total liabilities, and therefore we had a net asset of basically $2.1 billion, or pretty much our net worth of $2.1 billion. Cash and cash equivalents, Mr. Speaker, which includes fixed deposit with maturity durations not exceeding 90 days, were $328 million, and marketable securities, which are all comprised of fixed deposits with maturity durations exceeding 90 days, were $207.4 million, for a total of $535.4 million with respect to bank account balances. Due to the significant cash balances on hand, Mr. Speaker, the government continues to place funds on longer-term fixed deposits in order to maximize interest income for government. These longer-term deposits are shown as marketable securities on the statement of financial position and are not included in the definition of cash and cash equivalents. That is a separate classification shown on the statement of financial position, which only represent deposits that are 90 days or less to maturity. Mr. Speaker, the statement of financial performance for the period shown on page 11 of the document indicates that core government earned total operating revenues of $446.9 million and incurred total operating expenditures of just of $225.9 million. The resulting operating surplus for core government was $221 million, Mr. Speaker. SAGC suffered a collected deficit of $5.2 million for the period, and thus the entire public sector had an operating surplus of $215.8 million for the quarter, which was actually 11.5% of our projected surplus for the period. Mr. Speaker, in terms of revenues were actually $30 million better than budget, and this was largely driven by partnership fees, which was $4.8 million ahead of expectations. License fees from mutual fund administrators, $3.9 million better than budget. Private fund fees were $3.8 million better than budget. Stamp duty and land transfers was $3.2 million better than budget. Work permit fees were $3.1 million better than budget. And revenues with respect to exempt companies were $1.8 million better than what we expected for the period, Mr. Speaker. And limited liability companies were associated with a revenue generation that was $1.3 million, also better than budget. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, while we did have some areas of government that performed well, some areas, one area in particular that jumped out that didn't perform as well as we wanted to, and that was the other import duty category, which was $7 million less than budget. Mr. Speaker, in terms of expenses, of the $225.9 million, it was actually $5.6 million less than what it is that we budgeted in terms of total. While we did have some areas of overspend, particularly in personnel costs and supplies and consumables, Mr. Speaker, we did exceed budget in areas where we had to pay more in terms of stipend that we had budgeted for. And I just wanted to make a note, Mr. Speaker, that in the areas where we were over budget, those approvals were actually obtained either by Section 12, which would have been by Finance Committee, or Section 11.5, which would have been done by Cabinet, although they were very limited done in terms of 11.5 during the first period. One of the things also, Mr. Speaker, I just want to highlight is that my team do give me a lot of information, boy. One of the things I just want to touch on, Mr. Speaker, is that we continue in terms of our assistance to other SAGCs. And during the period, I just want to make a note that we actually gave loans to CIAA, Cayman Islands Airports Authority, and the Cayman Turtle Farm of 4.5 million apiece during that period. And we think that's important because it also keeps down the interest expense, and those loans were actually done, at least for the first year or the first 2 years, at 0% interest. So just wrapping up, Mr. Speaker, the overall fiscal performance reported for the period shows central government operating surplus of 221 million, which is 18.6 million, or 9.2% better than budget. The SAGC's combined deficit period of 5.2 million is a small deficit, and our entire public sector 215.8 million, or 11.5% better than what we'd expected. Our cash position remains strong, and we are trying our best as a government, Mr. Speaker, to maintain a certain amount of discipline in terms of keeping expenses down, because we're still aware that we have challenges that are happening globally and locally. And while the results, Mr. Speaker, for core government itself is actually better than what we expected, we recognize it is still early days in the year, and there are still a lot of things that can come, a lot of things that can still happen. And just to borrow a line, Mr. Speaker, which I think summarizes the government's position, and it's probably a poem that you would be familiar with, Frost, that says, "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but we have promises to keep and miles to go before we sleep." And miles to go before we sleep. Mr. Speaker, I just really want to thank the Premier for the position that he has taken in terms of ensuring a certain amount of prudent discipline in the process. It does help when you have the Premier also driving that discipline. I also want to thank my other ministerial colleagues who recognize that we still have challenges, and they're not willing in some cases to forego certain expenditures if need be, to directly to recognize that we actually hit the target and make sure that we maintain our surplus position that we budgeted for this year. I mean, we have a reputation of always having surplus positions, and because of the COVID pandemic, we basically went into deficits. And one of the main priorities for us for this year, Mr. Speaker, is not just to get government finances back into a surplus position, but also at the same time do what it is that we can do to alleviate many of the challenges that our people face. I also want to thank our parliamentary secretaries, Mr. Speaker. Their contribution in caucus and even covering for ministers from time to time has been very invaluable. And it's very hard sometimes when there's so much work to be done and you don't have enough people in which to share it up. So the parliamentary secretaries have really gone above and beyond during this time in terms of supporting many of the other members of cabinet. I also have to thank the governor, Mr. Speaker. He has been, in fairness to him, he has really stepped up in terms of trying to also work with the government in terms of keeping costs down and wherever it is that we can, because that's one of the very few things that we really do have control of, is what it is that we expend. The Deputy Governor, the Attorney General, has also done their valuable part in cabinet also in that regard. So, and I really want to thank them. Mr. Speaker, this report is actually available on the government website, and it has already been gazetted. So if anyone have any questions or need more detailed information, it's available there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, Cayman Islands Government 2021 Annual Report, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
Honorable Deputy Premier, Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honorable House the annual report for the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development for the year ended 31st of December 2021.
So ordered. Is the Minister speaking?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, briefly. I need that. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the Office of the Auditor General issued an unqualified opinion of the, actually, one second. Sorry. Mr. Speaker, the Office of the Auditor General issued an unqualified opinion on the financial statements for the ministry for the year ended 31st of December 2021. And I'll be remiss, Mr. Speaker, if I didn't use this opportunity to take a little bragging rights that this was the first annual report of all the ministries that was actually completed. So I'm sorry, guys, that's kind of competitive like that. So I just want to make that note, Mr. Speaker. That's the reason why it's coming so early. Well, I just want to touch on a few highlights of the annual report, Mr. Speaker. First of all, we have on page 6 of the annual report, you see that we had 157 staff, of which 138 or 88% were Caymanian. I'm also pleased to report, Mr. Speaker, that the majority of staff are actually female, and 67% of the staff, 67% of the staff are actually female. And I am conscious, Mr. Speaker, that the majority of the staff are actually more than 46 years of age. And being 49 myself, I don't feel so old being amongst them. One of the couple of highlights, Mr. Speaker, I want to touch on for the ministry during the 2021 year. There's a few stuff that was actually achieved. They issued the pre-election, the pre-election economic and financial update that was actually done. We launched the census for the 2021 population census. We processed 1,284 waivers for stamp duty at a value of $2.5 million. We invested government funds. We earned $2.4 million in interest. We oversaw supported $500 million worth of procurement by 41 entities across the entire public sector. We actually got the strategic policy statement out in time again, just 3 months required after the election. We got the budget done, Mr. Speaker. We're implementing a risk register tool, which forms part of the risk management framework. And I'm also pleased to report, Mr. Speaker, that in addition to delivering 98.5% of mail on time, the post office also falls on the Ministry of Finance. The post office actually received the Universal Postal Union's Quality of Service Award for the outstanding implementation of the Global Monitoring System project. On page 26 of the annual report, Mr. Speaker, we show that the statement of equity and executive financial transaction shows that on behalf of Cabinet, the ministry collected $49.1 million in executive revenue, which was $11.4 million below budget. And I just wanted to pause right here, Mr. Speaker, just to highlight that one of the things that actually came in below budget is that when the budget was actually prepared back in 2019 for the 2020 and 2021 years, it was pre-pandemic. And the negative variance that we had was largely on the cruise departure tax and tourism accommodation tax, which was actually collected on behalf of Cabinet, and because of the global pandemic, those targets weren't actually met. So I just want to put that in this context as it stands. And also, again, the stamp duty online fees was actually $200,000 below budget. And again, that was because of the online meters in the Caribbean exited the market on the 31st of December 2021. Sorry, 2019, not 2021, I apologize. The past service pension liability payment was over budget by $2.6 million due to the adoption of the recommended contribution rates in the 1st of January 2020 pension actual reports. And the cost of general insurance, Mr. Speaker, was also $1.4 million above budget due to increase in premium rates. That's too much information. Yeah, Mr. Speaker, so overall it's a pretty good report. It's a detailed report, and I would encourage everyone to take a look at it. There's a lot of work that went into it, and again, it was the first one that was actually done. So I just want to, again, put that out there. But I want to thank, Mr. Speaker, the Financial Secretary, Mr. Ken Jefferson. I mean, is no stranger to the members of this House. He's a decent and dedicated public servant, and honestly, he has made my life, Mr. Speaker, so much easier in this role. He has a very good team that he has assembled over the years. Ann Owens, Michael Nixon, Assistant Financial Secretary, also the Accountant General, Matthew Tibbetts, and a lot of the people in the Treasury staff. I mean, Gloria Miles, everyone. I mean, really good, solid.
Who's the assistant?
Which one?
Who's the assistant?
Cool. No, man. No, Ann Owens and Michael Nixon are Assistant Financial Secretary. Yeah. That's fine. But I just want to thank them, Mr. Speaker, and also I want to thank all the other ministries, CFOs, and chief officers, because at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, the finance team performs a central function, and a lot of the work that we do could not be done without the cooperation of many of the other portfolios and ministries. So their efforts are greatly appreciated. And it's one of the things, Mr. Speaker, I really want to thank everyone for is that starting this year, we have actually, the actual cabinet note on the financial statement have actually increased by almost 5-folds, because we're getting a lot of information from a lot of ministries now on a monthly basis. We are aware that it takes a lot of time, and April was the first month that everyone successfully got it in on time. And we're now looking forward to start putting a lot of the stuff that the ministries are doing outside in the public more, so the public is aware that the government is working for them. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank everyone and for their cooperation throughout the year and putting up with me, because I know I can be very difficult in this role too. And I know the honorable leader of the opposition knows the challenges that come with being in this role, and it can be quite unpopular sometimes, but I'm grateful for it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Auditor's Oversight Authority Annual Report for the year ending 31st of December 2021, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Financial Services and Commerce.
The Honourable the Minister of Financial Services and Commerce.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I rise to lay on the table of this Honourable House the annual report and audited financial statements of the Auditor's Oversight Authority for the year ended 31 December 2021.
So ordered. Is the Minister speaking to the report?
Just very briefly, Mr. Speaker. The report is in itself, and the audited financial statements are pretty straightforward. My only comment is a brief word of thanks to the outgoing chair, Mr. Mike Austin. Anyone who I think has encountered or worked with Mr. Austin, I believe would agree that he's a kind, measured, diplomatic individual. And under his leadership for the last 10 years on this board, I would like to thank him for his dedicated service. He's still an able mind that I plan to pick his brain from time to time informally, but I do want to officially read into the record a huge thanks for his service, not just in this board, but to financial services industry over the years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
(2020) Annual Report for the National Roads Authority for the 2020 financial year, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure.
The Honourable the Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to lay on the table the annual report for the National Roads Authority 2020.
So ordered. Does the Minister wish to speak to the report?
Just briefly, sir. Mr. Speaker, while I do not wish to speak specifically to the authority's annual report that is being tabled at this time, I do want to take this opportunity to thank the NRA's management and staff for their continued hard work and dedication to improving the road infrastructure needs across the Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, as the Minister responsible for the roads, I stand here to remind the public of the Park government commitment to improve our roadways for our people in these islands. And while we have a lot of work to do, I am hoping that our residents coming from the east have experienced a difference. We continue to humbly ask your patience as we continue to work. However, I want to remind you all that our traffic problems is everyone's business. And we have to do our part to reducing the traffic. For example, if you can do carpooling, please do so. I am confident that the NRA and its board will continue to make the progress in the vision to enhance the quality of life, promote economic prosperity, and improve the access and mobility for all residents and visitors of the Cayman Islands. I want to thank my colleagues in the Cabinet and the House of Parliament for your support as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Office of the Auditor General Annual Report, 31st of December 2021, providing value to the people of the Cayman Islands, to be laid on the table by the Chairman of the Standing Public Accounts Committee, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the annual report of the Office of the Auditor General for the year ended the 31st of December 2021.
So ordered. Is the member speaking to the report?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just briefly, Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General's external auditors, Baker Tilly, issued an unqualified opinion on the financial statements of the Auditor General's office on the 18th of March 2022. Mr. Speaker, those financial statements indicate that the Auditor General's office generated a small surplus of about $586,000, and in keeping with the Public Management and Finance Act, that surplus will be returned to central government in this coming financial year. That's my contribution, sir. Thank you.
Office of the Auditor General, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on government finances, update to March 2022. To be laid on the table by the Chairman of the Standing Public Accounts Committee, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House a report of the Office of the Auditor General entitled The Impact of the COVID-19 Pandemic on Government Finances, update to March 2022.
So ordered. Is the member speaking to the report?
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. So I do have a few brief comments. Mr. Speaker, I consider this one of the most comprehensive report that government will have with regard to the cost of the COVID pandemic directly to the central government as well as some of the statutory authorities and government-owned companies. Mr. Speaker, this really makes for interesting reading for anyone who has an interest in what the impact has been of the COVID pandemic on government's finances. In terms of just highlight numbers, it shows that government has spent well over $200 million directly on the COVID pandemic, and it has foregone estimated revenues of over $100 million. Total impact is well north of $300 million. Members of Parliament, that's just over a 2-year period. And so the effect has been phenomenal, certainly. And a read-through of this document, Mr. Speaker, will give a lot of insight as to how government spent the money, and you know, an indication there too of the continuing impacts that we continue to experience as a result of the pandemic, because I know government is continuing to spend quite a bit of sums every month. And I personally see that that will continue for some time. It's not going to stop immediately. But so this is a very profound report, and I commend it to all members of this House and to the public. As well, I'd like to thank the Auditor General for the time and effort she has taken to prepare this report. The Public Accounts Committee did not hold any public hearings on it because there is nothing really for us to report or examine. This is just a factual report for consideration by the public. So I commend it to all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I haven't had a chance to read all the report, and I don't know that, and I would think that the Auditor General would not know of the efforts made by separate members, each of us separately as members, working in our constituencies, and the amounts that we have given thousands and thousands of dollars to people. That would not be reported there. But I want to, from this vantage point, say to members, thank you for your efforts, because I know personally what I did. Me and two of my assistants at the time not being paid by government. The efforts we made, the amounts we have given, and that one of my assistants went to our house that had COVID. We did not know till 2 days later that 3 members was affected. And those kind of people don't get thanks. They don't get thanks. Our people that work with us don't get any kind of praise and acknowledgement unless it comes from within this house ourselves. But I want to thank all of you, because I know how much members have given themselves. When I say I know how much, I know there's a lot more that I don't know that they have given, but I know of the work that has been put in by members of this House in assisting our people. It might never be acknowledged, but I do so from this vantage point. People get MBEs, people get all sorts of awards, but the people that assist us in our districts don't get recognized. Some don't get paid. Only our 2 or 1, at that time, only 1 in our offices could get paid by government because they work in the office. But loads of people work out there for us, assisting us, helping other people, and never get acknowledged. And I want to do so from this vantage point, to thank them for all that they have done, and to thank you all you members, because I know you have worked, I know. Thank you all very much.
Office of the Auditor General, Financial Reporting of the Cayman Islands Government, General Report, 31st of December 2020, Report of the Standing Public Accounts Committee, and the Report of the Office of the Auditor General, Financial Reporting of the Cayman Islands Government, General Report, 31st of December 2020, to be laid on the table by the Chairman of the Standing Public Accounts Committee, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House a report from the Office of the Auditor General entitled Financial Reporting of the Cayman Islands Government, together with the report of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the report of the Office of the Auditor General, Financial Reporting of the Cayman Islands Government, General Report, 31st of December 2020, December 2021.
So ordered. Is a member speaking to the report?
Just a few brief comments, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a general purpose report, really, from the Auditor General to the Public Accounts Committee, giving us an update of the status of audit of financial statements of all government entities for the year ended December 31, 2020. The report itself does not contain any recommendations, and so we did not have any public hearings with regard to those, but we did have to, as part of it, discuss the report in detail over 2 administrative meetings. The report itself makes a few observations And the Public Accounts Committee had 2 other observations to add of its own to her report. And so I commend the report as well as that of the Public Accounts Committee to this Honourable House. Thank you, sir.
Office of the Auditor General, follow up on past PAC recommendations 2022 report. Report of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the report of the Office of the Auditor General. Follow up on past PAC recommendations 2022. To be laid on the table by the Chairman of the Standing Public Accounts Committee, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House a report from the Office of the Auditor General, follow up on past PAC recommendations 2022, Report 1, together with a report of the Standing Public Accounts Committee on the report of the Office of the Auditor General on follow up on past PAC recommendations 2022, Report 1, January 2022.
So ordered. Does the member wish to speak to those reports?
Briefly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Office of the Auditor General made this report to the Public Accounts Committee at its request to follow up on past recommendations made by the PAC from prior years. The report itself considered three reports of the Auditor General from the Auditor General. One was the government's use of consultants and temporary staff. Secondly, government's use of outsourced services issued in June 2019. And 3, fighting corruption in the Cayman Islands, November 2019. The first report I mentioned, government's use of consultants and temporary staff, February 2018. Mr. Speaker, the Public Accounts Committee considered this report, and we held public hearings with regard to it. And we adopted and made a few more recommendations ourselves with regard to the report. And so I commend this report to the Parliament and to members of the public who may have an interest. Thank you, sir.
Report and recommendation of the Minister responsible for lands on the vesting of Crown Land, Block 13EH, parcels 167 and 6, to Sealand Adventure Tours Limited, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of District Administration and Lands.
The Honourable the Minister of Education, District Administration and Lands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I seek permission to lay on the table of this Honourable House the report for the disposition of the Crown property that has been prepared in accordance with the requirement of the Government Vesting of Lands Act 2005 revision.
So ordered. Is the Minister speaking to the report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Sealand Adventure Tours Limited proposed to the government that it construct a dock on the Crown seabed in order to connect 2 Crown parcels, the rock outcrop island that is Block 13EH, Parcel 6, and the mainland that is Block 13EH, Parcel 167. The location is by the Georgetown's existing public boat ramp and the dock at Whitehall Bay, next to the Catboat Club. Mr. Speaker, this company is offering to fund and construct a concrete dock to an agreed specification, which will be approximately 225 feet in length and 6 feet wide. The company will retain exclusive use of approximately 1/3 of the dock in frontage, which is to be used to pontoon dock its own jet skis for commercial tour excursions. Mr. Speaker, the other 2/3 of the dock in frontage will be available for non-commercial public use. The existing public dock and boat ramp are unaffected and will therefore remain available for the continued public use. Mr. Speaker, the Cabinet considered a report on the matter and agreed to lease to the company the footprint of Crown seabed that will be required to support the proposed new dock. Mr. Speaker, the cost of the dock construction will be several $100,000, and as such, the lease term is to be for 25 years. The annual rent under the lease is to be a nominal peppercorn in order to reflect the public benefit of the new dock, which will be realized at nil cost to the general public. As such, the commissioning of valuation for the reports for this said leasehold vesting of Crown land is not considered appropriate and has been waived by the Governor in Cabinet. Mr. Speaker, the company has successfully applied to Cabinet for a coastal works permit to construct the dock. After careful analysis and consideration of the reports provided, it was resolved that Cabinet advise His Excellency the Governor to approve the vesting of the Crown land required for construction of the proposed dock by way of granting a 25-year lease to the company at a peppercorn rent. The company will effectively lease back to the Crown at peppercorn rent the approximately 2/3 of the dock frontage that will be available for non-commercial public use at all times. Maintenance of the dock, Mr. Speaker, will be the sole responsibility of the company. I thank you.
Report and recommendations of the Minister responsible for lands on the vesting of Crown land, Block 5C, Parcel 43, to John and Cheryl Furness, Cheryl E. Ramsey, Offsite Marketing Limited, and Globe Holding Limited, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of District Administration and Lands.
The Honourable Minister of Education, District Administration and Lands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I seek permission to lay on the table of this Honourable House the report for the disposition of Crown property that has been prepared in accordance with the requirement of the Governor's Vesting of Lands Act 2005 revision.
So ordered. Is the Minister speaking to the report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the 3 valuations have been carried out on the subject property. Each valuation report forms part of the overall report, which provides a general indication of the value of the said Crown property. Mr. Speaker, the report deals with the sale of Block 5C, Parcel 43, jointly to the owners of the 4 parcels that surround it. Block 5C, Parcel 43, is a Crown parcel comprising of a small 0.1 acre square-shaped undeveloped parcel of land located in the residential neighbourhood behind Heart of Cayman, near the Willafarrington Drive in the district of West Bay, by the West Bay Juncture. The parcel is fully enclosed by these 4 undeveloped parcels. Mr. Speaker, the parcel only had pedestrian rights of access from the Willafarrington Drive over parcel registered to Globe Holding Limited. Mr. Speaker, the 4 parcels that completely surround the subject Crown land are registered respectively to the following proprietors: John and Cheryl Furness, Cheryl E. Ransom, Offsite Marketing Limited, and Globe Holdings Limited. Mr. Speaker, in isolation, the parcel is far too small to enable any development, and the considered view is that the land is best sold to the adjoining landowners. The parcel was offered for sale by public tender. Cabinet considered a report on the matter, and after careful analysis and consideration, it was resolved that Cabinet advised His Excellency the Governor to approve the vesting of the said Crown land, Block 5C, Parcel 43, jointly to the four surrounding proprietors, being the Furnaces, Ransom, Offsite Marketing Limited, Globe Holding Limited, for a consideration of 15,000 CI dollars. Plus stamp duty. Mr. Speaker, that concludes my remarks in this regard.
Cayman Islands Government Portfolio of the Civil Service 2021 Annual Report to be laid on the table by the Honorable Deputy Governor.
The Honorable the Deputy Governor.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I beg to lay on the table of this Honorable House the annual report of the portfolio of the Civil Service as of 31st of December 2021.
So ordered. Is the Deputy Governor speaking to the report?
Yes, sir. Could I have that? Yes, Mr. Speaker, I can't pass up this opportunity to highlight some of the good work of the portfolio of the Civil Service. I also want to pause and congratulate the Deputy Premier and the Ministry of Finance for leading the way in getting their accounts done in record time. But I do want to say that the portfolio of the Civil Service was right behind them. And I think, sir, that it is a great achievement for us as a government that we are able to get our reports done to the Auditor General in record time. Big thanks to the Auditor General for turning the reports around in record time. Mr. Speaker, the fact that we are talking about turning reports around in record time, the fact that we're talking about getting the reports submitted early, is a real testament to the improvements that the government and the civil service have made together in improving the overall quality reports of our financial statements. We're no longer talking about getting them submitted on time, or we're no longer talking about whether they are of high quality. It is now a given that they will be submitted on time. We now have a race to see who can submit them the earliest and also of the best quality. And that speaks really well for all of the entire civil service. And I do want to also join the Deputy Premier in thanking the Ministry of Finance for all of their leadership and the work that they have done, working together with the chief officers and the CFOs to deliver this exemplary performance. So my thanks to all involved. Mr. Speaker, the portfolio of the Civil Service has three strategic areas of delivery: HR policy, public sector reform, and good governance. The portfolio is comprised of the Office of the Deputy Governor, the Policy Support Unit, the Civil Service College, the Management Support Unit, Strategic and Corporate HR, the National Archives, the Commission Secretariat, the Internal Audit Service, the Elections Office, the Office of Education Standards, and the Passport and Corporate Services Office. Mr. Speaker, the year began with the Elections Office delivering free, fair, and well-run general election. The election saw 17,387 voters cast their vote and resulted in the civil service welcoming a new government. The data team within the portfolio of the Civil Service, POCS, swiftly enacted post-election changes to the organizational structure to ensure a seamless transition and to allow the new government to deliver its program of work. Much of 2021 saw the civil service provide normal unfettered services to the public. However, by the end of the third quarter, the civil service was required to swiftly shift priorities to manage the reemergence of COVID-19 in the community, while simultaneously assisting the government with the safe implementation of the National Border Reopening Plan. As done in 2020, PUCS again led its expertise and support to the CIG Program Board in order to provide policy work to the Cabinet, policy advice to the Cabinet, and strategic leadership for Travel Cayman and the National Border Reopening Programs. Through their work with the Program Board, PUCS also took a leading role in providing support to the Health Services Authority, helping the authority with process and workflow design, and the recruitment of additional staff to assist with increased demand. Additionally, PUCS contributed to the development of a national lateral flow testing policy, created and implemented the guidelines for the deployment of our lateral flow tests within the civil service workplaces, and played an integral role in the procurement of the initial LFT stock. To provide sound and clear guidance, PUCS issued the first ever dynamic policy, the COVID-19 policy, which allowed for online updates in real time. The policy was published to the CIG's intranet site of 14th of September 2021 and provide guidance on COVID-19 related issues. Mr. Speaker, even though the pandemic diverted resources for the last quarter of the year, PUCS departments and sections still got on with business as usual in many areas. Significant work was done in 2021 to prepare for the 2022 go-live of the integrated enterprise-wide human resource management system, which, when fully implemented, will support the streamlining of processes and improve capability to support a modern HR function. Mr. Speaker, the Civil Service College delivered multiple noteworthy programs, resulting in over 150 civil servants achieving internationally recognized City and Guilds ILM qualification in leadership and management. 26 civil servants completed the Skills for Life program, and over 5,000 online learning courses were accessed and completed on the Civil Service College new learning portal, LinkedIn Learning. That's over 5,000 online courses, Mr. Speaker. To build leadership capacity now and into the future, the Civil Service College significantly expanded its programs to offer additional ILM leadership courses from level 2, which is pre-college level, to level 7, which is postgraduate level, as well as developed online courses tied to the government's core competencies of delivering results, working together, and building capability. In my office, my capable team led numerous cross-cutting and important initiatives on both the business as usual and COVID-19 fronts. Through the services of the SRU team, I, along with my senior leadership team, were well supported in delivering the government's National Border Reopening Program and the National Critical Readiness, Preparedness and Response Plan. On the business as usual side, the Office of the Deputy Governor, Secretarial Services continue to support the effective operation of a range of boards and committees, thus enabling the delivery of key benefits to some of the most vulnerable citizens and the achievement of their good governance objectives. Mr. Speaker, for the 5th consecutive year, PUCS facilitated the delivery of the annual Employee Engagement Survey, which in 2021 yielded responses from 3,329 civil servants, or 78% of the service. The Engagement Index, which is a measure of the average level of engagement across all civil service entities, held steady at 72%. I'm pleased to report that across the service, 96% of respondents confirmed that they were aware of our vision to be a world-class civil service. 94% said they were interested in their work. 93% said they have the skills to do their job effectively. I'm very proud of that, Mr. Speaker. And 88% of respondents reported that they are proud to be a civil servant. Again, this all makes me very proud. This level of awareness and pride among civil servants humbles me, Mr. Speaker, and makes me proud to lead a group of such engaged and willing employees. During the year, POCS operations teams focused on innovating ways of working. The pay and reward review was completed. This work identified 3 principles underpinning CIG reward strategy, namely that pay and rewards should be transparent, fair, and enabling. In January 2021, the POCS facilitated and published amendments to the personnel regulations. The amendments introduced a new death in service benefit to support bereaved families by paying 3 months' salary and health insurance to the family of any civil servant who dies while still in active service. The amendments also increased the minimum vacation entitlements to 18 days per annum, up from 12 days, which benefited more than 300 civil servants who are paid on the hourly scale. By bringing their minimum leave entitlements on par with their counterparts who are paid on the salary scale. The amendment also resulted in the adoption of changes in the salary scale affecting grades A to D by reducing the extent of the overlap within these grades and raising the salary ceiling in preparation for future adjustments to follow in the lower grades. Also in December 2021, the POCS team processed a one-off honorarium for non-executive civil servants on grades E and below, valued at $500. The honorarium was increased to $1,000 for civil servants working uniform services and other emergency operations who demonstrated their commitment to building resilience by being vaccinated ahead of the border reopening. And of course, I extend my thanks to the government for their support in paying these honorariums to our well-deserving civil servants. Mr. Speaker, following similar work in 2020 with smaller statutory authorities and government-owned companies, the job evaluation team completed the work to evaluate roles at 6 of the largest SAGCs, aligned to support the implementation of Section 47 of the Public Authorities Law. Work to advance the CIG's 5-year strategic plan continued in 2021. In February, the MSU rolled out the Civil Service Customer Service Pledge, Deliver. This pledge spells out in practical terms what is expected of each civil servant in order to make extraordinary moments of customer service or business as usual. In the area of governance, the Internal Audit Service underwent its first external quality assurance assessment and received the highest rating achievable, general compliance. Mr. Speaker, the Office of the Education Standards successfully launched the second cycle of the school inspections program, carrying out 18 full inspections and 10 follow-through inspections. The National Archives continue to provide public agencies with advice and guidance on general record-keeping issues, digitization of records, and disposal schedules development, as well as they acquired additional historical collections to enhance corporate memory. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that a new Caymanian manager was recruited for the Commission Secretariat, which supports the vital work of Cayman's independent constitutional commissions. The newest addition to the portfolio, namely the Passport and Corporate Services, made amendments to the schedule of the fees to reduce the local passport fees for persons aged 65 and older in support of the National Older Persons Policy. Mr. Speaker, for its contribution to the civil service and the country in managing the various challenges of 2020, the largest being the COVID-19 emergency, POCS received international recognition when it won the prestigious People's Team of the Year Public Sector Award. This award forms part of the People's Management Award scheme hosted by the UK-based Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. This victory was a huge accomplishment for the POCS team and speaks volumes to their capabilities and drive. And for that, I join the CIPD in applauding their efforts. As I said, Mr. Speaker, this is an international award, and the POCS team was up against various companies in the UK, including the National Health Service, and they came out on top. Last but certainly not least, the POCS finance team again delivered an unqualified or clean audit opinion in 2021. This remarkable achievement marks almost a decade of clean audits for the portfolio. Mr. Speaker, as you and the members of this honorable House would have heard, POCS again proved that it can produce exceptional results both in times of calm and crisis. POCS made substantial contributions in 2021, all of which contributed to the overall success of the civil service and helped to move the needle to our journey to becoming a world-class civil service. Mr. Speaker, my thanks to my excellent Chief Officer, Ms. Gloria McField-Nixon, and her amazing team at POCS for another year of solid performance. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. What a good team.
Questions to honorable ministers and members of the cabinet?
Before we take suspension of Standing Order 23-6, we need to suspend standing orders to allow questions to be asked after the hour 11 a.m. Honorable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move under the relevant standing order 23s, 7 and 8 to allow the House to consider questions after the hour of 11.
Question is the standing orders be suspended to allow questions to be asked after the hour 11 a.m. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Standing order is suspended. Now, Premier, the suspension of Standing Order 23-6 to allow more than 3 questions to be asked in the name of the same member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I move suspension of Standing Order 23-6 to allow more than 3 questions to be asked in the name of the same member. Thank you.
The question is that Standing Orders be 23-6 be suspended in order to allow more than 3 questions to be asked in the name of the same member. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Standing Order 23-6 is suspended.
The elected member for Georgetown East to ask the Honorable Deputy Premier, Minister of Finance and Economic Development. Question number 1.
The Honorable Leader of the Opposition and member for Georgetown East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 1, standing in my name. It is directed to the Honourable Deputy Premier and Minister of Finance and Economic Development. Can the Honourable Minister confirm whether he is still pursuing the government taking up a $400 million 30-year bullet bond or any type of bullet bond? And if so, does he have the approval of the Cabinet and the United Kingdom government? Thank you, sir.
The Honourable, the Deputy Premier and Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the answer. The government is not considering the pursuit of a US $400 million bullet bond, nor is it considering executing any other type of bullet bond. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The elected member for Red Bay to ask the Honourable Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure. Question number 2.
The elected member for Red Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am to ask the Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure question number 2 on the order paper standing in my name, which reads as follows. Can the Honorable Minister provide an update on the status of the work on the Eddie Sanchez Memorial Park in the Red Bay and Prospect constituencies?
The Honorable the Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing, and Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, the Eddie Sanchez Park walking track is completed, and the 2 cabanas have been re-erected following the pass of grace damages. As the member is aware, a management committee was formed with the community members to help ensure the park is to be developed and the community needs in mind. The Public Works Department officials, along with the committee, are planning further enhancements by Eddie Sanchez Park. The committee is now seeking a private sector donation to purchase topsoil and plants to complete the landscaping beautification of the property. The parking lot paving works are pending, subject to completion of the landscaping works and the mitigation of the risk of pavement damage by heavy equipment during the landscaping work. It is our ministry's intent to distribute available funding from the current budget allocation to the park upgrades across all districts. We believe that the parks are a crucial part of the community, and they have significant impact to the development of the children and the happiness of everyone in the neighborhood. All works are anticipated to be completed by quarter of Q4 2022.
The elected member for Georgetown South to ask the Honourable Minister of Education, question number 3.
The member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask the Honourable Minister of Education question number 3 on the order paper standing in my name. The question: can the Honourable Minister provide an update on the timetable for the introduction of the new Cayman Islands national curriculum to cover students at all levels in Cayman's public schools?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Honourable Member. The answer: the Cayman Islands primary national curriculum was implemented in primary school, Key Stage 1 and 2, in August 2019. With the school closures due to COVID-19 in March 2020 through June 2020, there was some interruption to the fluid implementation of the primary curriculum. However, implementation continued in August 2020. This year, the Key Stage 2 curriculum was examined using the UK's standardized assessment tools, otherwise known as the SATS, that are administered to students in years 2 and 6 in the UK. This will enable the Ministry and the Department of Educational Services to make international comparisons of students' progress. This assessment will also assist the system in identifying any gaps that exist and planning the next steps for closing those gaps. The school closures also impacted the planning of Key Stage 3 curriculum, which was due to be implemented in August 2020, and the analysis of the provision of Key Stage 4. Planning for the implementation of Key Stage 3 curriculum continued with the aim to have phased implementation in Year 7 in August 2021, Year 8 in August 2022, and Year 9 in August 2023. Documents including Key Stage 3 assessment framework, Key Stage 3 curriculum, Key Stage 3 gap analysis were finalized and delivered in August 2021. With the community spread of COVID-19 in the Cayman Islands and the crippling impact it had on the normal functioning of schools between September 2021 to present, the global challenge with shipping, which impacted the delivery of resources to support the curriculum. The implementation of Key Stage 3 curriculum at Year 7 was significantly impacted. The Key Stage 3 curriculum in Years 7 and 8 will be fully implemented in August this year. It is proposed that the analysis of the provision of Key Stage 4 reconvenes in August of 2022 with a view to roll out the recommendations for any changes to the provision in Key Stage 4 in August of next year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary. The member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I have a supplementary. Can the minister say how the students are progressing with the new curriculum? Subject to them, the implementation in August of 2019?
The Honorable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the member for the supplementary. Mr. Speaker, because it moved to the standardization assessment that is carried out in the UK, those results will be forthcoming the end of June, and at that stage we'll do a public release and we'll be happy to share the information thereon. We're being cautiously optimistic that COVID didn't damper the spirits of the children to that extent, but in comparison to the rest of the Caribbean, we think we have a lot to be thankful for.
The member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have one more supplementary question. With the rollout now of the key stages for year 7, 8, and 9 for this year in August 2022, will the teachers be given the training and development they need to ensure that the new curriculum for those stages can be successfully implemented?
The Honorable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely. In fact, our teachers are already involved in the development and will also be involved, obviously, in the implementation. But that is the goal, because for education to proceed and excel to the world-class education that all in this honourable House are seriously concerned about funding and supporting, we have to have all of the vested parties, the education department, the parents, and the teachers. So yes, absolutely so.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Supplementary question for the Minister. Having read through the answer given by the Minister, it looks to me like there are 4 key stages of implementation. Am I correct? So that then just for clarity, from my understanding, the answer says that it will be fully implemented by August of 2023. That's correct? Okay.
Minister, you wish to reply?
Just to confirm that his analysis is spot on.
The elected member for Georgetown South to ask the Honourable Minister of Education, question number 4.
The member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask the Honourable Minister of Education question number 4 on the order paper standing in my name. Question. Can the Honourable Minister provide an update on the implementation of her plans to improve and extend early years education provision?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very happy to. The answer: all government primary schools have reception classes. There's also the intent to complete a further block of classrooms for Red Bay Primary. A draft early childhood care and education strategy has been produced and is going through the approval process. This strategy provides a strategic plan for further development of the early childhood sector. This strategy serves three critical purposes: to introduce, embed, and to extend a number of initiatives aimed at improving outcomes for practitioners, children, and families. The successful delivery of this strategy will mitigate the effects of inequality and poverty and ensure that increasing numbers of children are ready for their educational journey and able to make an effective transition into school. The member would be aware of the introduction of the nursery class in Cayman in October 2019, as it was done under the previous government. It is still my hope to establish nursery classes in all of government primary schools. The Early Childhood Care and Education, the ECCE, unit is undergoing a restructuring exercise with the following benefits. The unit will be more strategic and intentional, giving greater attention to implementing a service delivery model where targeted systems are built to support the early childhood sector. The restructuring will complement the achievement of the priority areas for ECCE set out in the said strategy. Changes to the professional development framework used by the unit to one which delivers high-impact training through a leadership lab. The focus will be on building capacity in the centers using each one, teach one concept. A new and strategic approach to support teaching and learning through the establishment of a teaching and learning cafe. This will also have an e-cafe component with videos and online suite that will minimize the number of in-person training that the unit conducts on a yearly basis, whilst having the potential to increase access to training. Greater emphasis on data collection and analysis, enabling the unit to determine the strategic direction that the unit needs to take, forecast, develop policies and legislation, and identify future needs. Provision of early services in East End through such activities as Summer Smart Start, an early stimulation program to equip parents with skills to build quality interaction and care. Additional services are being investigated for implementation at a later date. Provision of access to funding for our most vulnerable children to attend early years centers through the Early Childhood Assistance Program, ECAP, on a rolling basis. Collaboration with the ECC unit with private agencies such as the Early Childhood Association, Literacy is for Life, LIFE, Inclusion Cayman, and the Wellness Center to provide training for parents and caregivers, development of programs to enhance the skills and knowledge of the ECCE practitioners. Collaboration with the Office of Educational Standards to develop the early years inspection framework, and in the future, national benchmarks for age and stage expectations, birth to 4 age group. Additional support for children birth to 4 years with special education needs, disabilities known as SEN/D, such as ECAP for alternative placements, training for parents and caregivers, and communication and language development, as well as other development training. All ECCE centers have in place, as of the 2021 school year, a special educational needs coordinator or a designated special education lead to support the needs for the SEN students and centers. These staff members have access to monthly training. The Early Intervention Program provides specialist support within the ECCE centers, catering to children from birth to age 4. identification through assessment of children with developmental delays, and provision of treatment in the areas of occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, and other specialist needs. This occurs in the centers and also at the AIP unit. The transition unit, Mr. Speaker, provides services for children who are of compulsory school age, that is 5 years, who do not have necessary readiness skills in communication and sensory development. As the member would also be aware, a new national primary curriculum was implemented in 2019, which included the Cayman Islands statutory framework for a foundation stage, that is reception. This included the introduction of Early Essence tool for tracking students' progress towards early learning goals. This enables international comparison of our students' progress and identification of needs for further support on a termly basis. All government primary schools have assistant teachers in all reception classes to provide additional support for these younger students. Since March 2020, schools have focused on the health and safety of students as the country navigated SARS-CoV-2. The 2021 school year saw our schools focusing on addressing learning loss in addition to continued focus on health and safety. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The elected member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In order to give all of our Caymanian children the best possible start in life, did the minister also work along with her colleague, the minister with responsibility for social development, to develop and implement this strategy, covering pre-birth to age 5 years, covering all aspects of health, education, and social development of our children?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Honourable Member from Georgetown South. Mr. Speaker, I'm reliably informed that the Minister of Education and DES collaborates with a number of government agencies, including but not limited to the specified ministry led capably by the Honourable Minister from Georgetown, from West Bay South. But in addition, we also collaborate with members in the private sector so that we can have a holistic approach in dealing with this, as the Honourable Member would fully appreciate and recognize. Education, like the slogan many years ago that said tourism is everybody business, education likewise is everybody business, and I'm happy to have been the minister in both the last government and this government, where the support has been unequivocal, recognizing the significance of education to our country.
The member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two more supplementary questions to the minister. Does the minister plan to extend and widen eligibility for financial assistance through the Early Childhood Assistance Programs, ECAP, to ensure we support the development of young Caymanian children during the current cost of living crisis?
Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks to the Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, one of the first things that I did in taking on responsibility for Minister of Education was that I became cognizant that the ECAP had a restrictive time limit for applications, and like sickness, financial emergencies don't normally blow a conch shell. So we took the decision that we would implement from the last government a rolling application process. What that does, Mr. Speaker, is not only has it open and extended the possibility of access to the financial funding from government, but it also gives the ECAP unit as well as the ministry an opportunity to assess the extrinsic factors, whether they're environmental, environmental, psychological, or financial. And as the member from Georgetown South rightly said, we are now going through a higher inflation that's anticipated. And so that has given the ministry an ability to look at it. As to date, we have not received a request for a shortage of funds yet in that, but I can assure the minister that I have every confidence that on both sides of the House, should that application come for increase, we would be meeting it as we have a rolling application now in process.
The member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have one last supplementary question. What action is the ministry taking to improve standards in privately run early years settings where the Office of Education Standards inspections reveal weaknesses? That is in the private run early education centers.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Honourable Member from Georgetown South. Again, I'm reliably informed that the majority of the work that that unit does is with the private sector, and they're also inspected by the Office of the Independent Standards for Education, and so there is an expectation that they will continue to improve. Obviously, some of them had some financial issues during COVID, and we had put together a committee on the last government, which continued under this government, for them to access those fundings, and we're fairly confident that all efforts are being done by the ECC centres because they are satisfactory, and this is a first that this has happened. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, when I say they're satisfactory, not to me myself, but based on the independent assessment of the Education Standards Office.
The elected member for Georgetown South to ask the Honourable Minister of Education. Question number 5.
The elected member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask the Honourable Minister of Education question number 5 on the order paper standing in my name. The question: can the Honourable Minister state whether she intends to update the Cayman Islands Special Educational Needs Code of Practice to ensure that it meets with current best practice?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and once again, thanks to the Honourable Member from Georgetown South. The answer, no. The current National Cayman Islands Special Education Needs Code of Practice, Cayman Islands Code of Practice for identification, assessment, and provision for additional learning support needs in education, known as the Code of Practice, reflects the best practices and was recently revised and implemented in August last year in all of our schools, that is public and private schools, compulsory and pre-compulsory.
The member for Georgetown South. Supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a supplementary question. Can the minister say whether parents and teachers were consulted as part of that review process?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again, I'm reliably informed by my able chief officer that both public and private parents and teachers were consulted. And perhaps, Mr. Speaker, I might wish to elucidate a bit so that members would understand why the government is not going to review it, because we just did it last year and it's implemented. But the training has been provided to all schools, as I said, public and private, compulsory and pre-compulsory, and that was led by the Ministry of Education. And we know, Mr. Speaker, that the policy is in line with the best practice, because It meets the international best practice by establishing a required clear consistency of approach to meeting all additional learning support needs, including the special education needs and disabilities. It also focuses on the high-quality teaching and continuum of meaningful and appropriate additional learning support to ensure that our children's additional learning support, that is the SEN, are identified as quickly as possible, that they are assessed and early action is taken to meet their needs. And Mr. Speaker, subject to the other supplementary, I can talk for about half an hour on this topic, but I know time is essence, but I'm happy to answer in a more supplementary.
The next question, please.
The elected member for Georgetown South to ask the Honourable Minister of Education, question number 6.
A member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask the Honourable Minister of Education, question number 6 on the order paper, standing in my name. The question: can Honourable Minister state what action she has taken or plans she has made in light of the serious concerns raised by the Office of Education Standards that students across the public school system experienced learning loss caused by interruptions to their education as a result of the various pandemic restrictions?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I apologize for not catching notice of you right away.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Honourable Member from Georgetown South. The answer: an April 4, 2022 article by the international consulting company McKinsey & Company states, and I quote, "The pandemic has taken a substantial toll on students' academic progress as well as their mental health. School systems can respond across multiple horizons to help students get back on track," unquote. The report goes on to say, and again, quote, "on average, students globally are 8 months behind where they would have been absent the pandemic," end quote. Mr. Speaker, the public and private schools in the Cayman Islands identified learning loss due to COVID. This was measured in government schools by progress tests and comparisons to previous benchmarks and expected progress at the current stage of the student's development. A number of schools have identified various ways to address the loss of their Raising Attainment Plans, the RAPS, including additional classes, increased intervention outside of class time, or pull-out sessions where the need is more urgent. Identification of additional resources and training, in particular for reading and numeracy, to help support teachers to further close these gaps for students, is also an ongoing process. A collaborative effort between the Ministry of Education, Department of Education Services, and schools in looking at ways to close this learning loss gap led to an increase in hours in the curriculum for literacy and numeracy when in-person instruction resumed in August 2021. These subjects are the building blocks for all subject areas. Principals and their staff have been collaborating with their colleagues within and across the learning communities to share best practices and resources where possible, including but not limited to materials and teaching assistance. The provision of laptops for students last year and associated electronic educational resources allowed our students to access remote learning while absent due to COVID and have access to additional educational resources outside the regular school day. Senior staff in the ministry have also collaborated with regional educators and ministries of education to produce plans for the Caribbean region to resolve the issue of learning loss that was experienced across the region globally. And I could, if I may interject here, Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely proud of my team because other Caribbean nations have come to Cayman to ask for us to assist and give guidance on how we were able to successfully navigate through this COVID time. This collaboration included the sharing of best practice for the Cayman Islands, which we were happy to do with our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean. It is to be noted, Mr. Speaker, that the Cayman Islands resumed in-class instruction in August 2020, which was one of the few Caribbean countries to be able to do so. In fact, some countries, as I said, in the Caribbean are still not completely operating with in-class instruction. The Office of Education Standards noticed that schools were indeed implementing several strategies to address learning loss, including subject leaders and the SLT reported that students continue to make progress despite minimal periodic learning loss due to enforced COVID absence. Individual subjects has deployed remedial activities to keeping students on track, the John Gray High School thematic visit report. Staff reported, and I quote, this is from the Office of the Educational Standard, staff reported that despite challenges with attendance and curriculum coverage, a majority of students continued to make acceptable progress in their learning. This was in part due to the range of online literacy and numeracy resources that gamified learning for students. This led to increased engagement in their learning, unquote, Georgetown Primary School Thematic Visit Report. The Lehman Scott High School Thematic Visit Report, and I quote, senior leaders and head of departments identified areas of learning loss and ensured the curriculum coverage through several initiatives, including postponing certain elements such as the science fair that enable other areas to be taught. Extra lessons had to be held in the afternoon before the second run of the school buses. The school also extended the school day by 1 hour for a term after the students returned from lockdown to ensure curriculum coverage, unquote. The Joanna Clark Primary School Thematic Visit Report, I quote, the school utilized a variety of student performance data when conducting subject gap analysis and developing subsequent plans to fill learning gaps. Assessments conducted, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the current academic year will inform the progress made in the recovery of learning loss by schools during this academic year. This data will also serve as benchmarking for the new academic year to inform planning and to gauge further progress made by the students. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister for that very detailed report. Just a final supplementary question here. Have sufficient additional funds been provided by the ministry or to the ministry to support the schools in tackling this, this problem? Or did they require additional funding?
Honorable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the indulgence I could liaise with my senior technical team from the ministry. Mr. Speaker, I'm infirm and can concur that there was sufficient funding in there because, as members would remember, when we did the budget, there were quite a number of assistant teachers who would come in, and that would be the one area that would have attracted additional financial resources. So that was anticipated and subject, obviously, to being able to get them hired, because like nursing teachers is in a very short demand. We should be okay. But again, I can say with confidence, both last government and this government, when it comes to education in the spectrum of the whole sharing up of the economic pie, education gets its fair share. Where I get some frustration is actually getting it done as fast as ministers would want it.
The Honourable the Minister, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister of Education. In her answer, Minister, you mentioned that I'm looking for the point. One of the bullet points you mentioned that the provision of laptops for students last year and the associated electronic educational resources allowed students to access remote learning while absent due to COVID-19 and have access to additional educational resources outside of regular school time. Can you say what the, give us a flavor for what was the experience of the implementation of that mode of teaching and instruction during that time period? And did the ministry and or students in the schools encounter any particular challenges with regard to it and adapting to that method?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think it was nothing short of a miracle that we had the vision to acquire these laptops even before the unsolicited entrance of COVID-19, so that when it came, there was just then the perceived challenge of actually putting it into use, but the children and the teachers had an opportunity. The teachers, in fact, got theirs the year before that we got the children. The main challenge, Mr. Speaker, and to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, was actually the speed of the internet, and for the children who didn't have immediate access to internet. I mean, since then, the IT manager, Mr. Lance, worked assiduously to ensure with our ICT providers that the broadband width has been increased, and also schools, including Cayman, and I can say it wasn't the first one, but we made sure that they did get included, got increased access. But also in this year's budget, members would see that there were allocations to continue with that program, because I took the decision in the government at the time, the last government concluded that it was best to have the computers move with the student if we're going to be creating a world-class working labor force within the Cayman Islands. And of course, with that came some responsibilities that they had to take care of it. There was a contract that you had to sign. Believe it or not, some parents did not even want to sign it, even though the computers were free. So that I said that to give an intimation of the challenge that we have in education to educate our children, and with the fulfillment of the policy of no child being left behind. So I would say, Mr. Speaker, that with the ongoing up-close analytical eye of the IT program, that we're in good state and miles ahead of the other Caribbean things. I saw our good friend, Right Honourable Andrew Holness, had a big foray on social media because they were able to deliver 20 laptops. We delivered over 5,000 laptops in this jurisdiction. So I think it bodes well, but I would take this opportunity as well to speak directly to our parents. The children are first and foremost theirs. They're a jewel from God, and each government does their endeavor best to ensure that we provided adequate, and in the last government and this government, more than most jurisdictions, to enable that our children can stand head and shoulders with anyone around the world. So as we engage in this educational journey, let us keep our commitment and may it not be diluted by any extrinsic factor.
electing member for Georgetown East to ask the Honourable ex officio member responsible for the portfolio of civil service. Question number 7.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 7, which is directed to the Honourable ex officio member responsible for the portfolio of the civil service. Question number 7 in my name. It reads, can the Honourable Deputy Governor advise, A, whether an investigation is underway regarding the leak of the Office of the Auditor General's report on the overseas offices and the Dubai World Expo? And if so, when does he anticipate that it will be concluded and the public updated accordingly? And B, if the investigation has not started, why not? And is the government committed to completing an investigation into this matter? Thank you.
The Honourable Deputy Governor.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I thank the member for the question. Mr. Speaker, the answer: an investigation was conducted in relation to the leak of the Office of the Auditor General's report on the overseas offices and the Dubai World Expo. Unfortunately, we were unable to identify the source of the leak.
The elected member for Georgetown East to ask the Honourable ex officio member responsible for the portfolio of the civil service. Question number 8.
Before you rise, Honourable Member, this one really has my mind boggled a bit, because the question asks, and I must say it slipped me, of something that is alleged. And I don't believe that that is proper. If you don't have factual base for something is being alleged. If the ministry wants to answer, then, or the Deputy Governor, I should say, wants to answer, I still feel that this word allegedly being disposed of without proper process being followed. I think in good parliamentary terms, that is not correct. This is hearsay. I know there's been talk around it, but it's hearsay. Allegedly. Reported. Many things being reported, they're wrong. Only video showed afterwards that proved it. And an honourable leader of the opposition, you would know that too. But I am a little bit put off by the word alleged. I don't think that the standing orders allows me and allows that kind of latitude. Whether a member is ready to respond or not, standing orders apply to the opposition and applies to government, and me too. And I am concerned about this word alleged. Now, if the member feels that he can say something to enlighten the situation, and the minister is taking no offense to it, because it certainly comes under a ministry.
Mr. Speaker, I'm taking a liberty to rise because I see you're trying to catch my eye, so I'm just writing procedurally not to substitute for an honourable minister.
No,
but for what it's worth, I can say you're absolutely correct that if it's alleged, then it's not properly before the House. But because the honourable Deputy Governor also has a law degree, the response that he's purporting to give will be within the ambit of it, so the result will be the same.
And it's something to enlighten members rather than to cause for the supplementaries and further discussion, because that's what I'm going to pay careful attention to. Honourable Deputy Governor. I was going to ask him to respond without you asking the question. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, sir. I get to that point now. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask question number 8 on the order paper standing in my name. It is directed to the Honourable ex officio member responsible for the portfolio of the Civil Service. And it says, can the Honourable Minister provide the facts regarding the topsoil or filth that was the property of the National Housing Development Trust that is alleged to have been disposed of without proper process being followed? B, advise whether an investigation into this matter has started, and if so, when will it likely be concluded? And C, assure the House that the report on the investigation will be made public as soon as the investigation is completed. Thank you, sir.
Honourable Deputy Governor.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and thank the member. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that this matter is under investigation by the Anti-Corruption Commission. Given this, I am unable to provide further comment.
No supplementary, sir.
Just to tell you, I was not going to allow any.
Statements by the Honourable Ministers and members of the Cabinet.
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I was invited by the Right Honourable Amanda Milling, UK Minister of State with responsibility for the overseas territories, to join a call with other overseas territory heads of government for an update on the UK's decision in relation to the recommendation of the British Virgin Islands Commission of Inquiry. Prior to a decision being made by the UK, Mr. Speaker, Minister Milling consulted widely. Immediately after the publication of the BVI Commission of Inquiry report, she traveled to the British Virgin Islands on 1st May and held a series of discussions with the then acting Premier, Dr. the Honourable Natalio Wheatley, and other stakeholders in the territory, including representatives from all political parties, public servants, business leaders, as well as civic and community leaders. Upon concluding her visit to the British Virgin Islands, Minister Milling issued a statement noting, quote, "This isn't a question of whether something should be done, it is a question of what is done. Action is needed now to strengthen the foundations of the territory, deliver a better public service, maintain a strong and resilient economy, and create better opportunities for the people of the BVI." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, this statement, along with the gravity of the recommendations of the BVI Commission of Inquiry report, left little doubt that action would be taken. However, Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that the government of the British Virgin Islands took a number of unprecedented steps following Minister Milling's return to the UK. On Thursday, 5th May, the BVI House of Assembly voted to revoke Andrew Foy's premiership after his arrest on the 29th of April in Florida on drug trafficking and money laundering charges. What followed next, Mr. Speaker, was the three major political parties in the British Virgin Islands joined together to form a national unity government under newly sworn-in Premier Dr. the Honourable Natalio Wheatley. Premier Wheatley, Mr. Speaker, immediately made a number of changes to the composition of the cabinet, and on behalf of the national unity government, publicly committed to reform. In a brief address after being sworn in, Premier Wheatley stated, "Our top priority is the implementation of the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry report within a framework of democratic governance and in close cooperation with the Governor and United Kingdom, our partners." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, yesterday was announced and reiterated during the call with Minister Milling that the UK has decided to maintain the operation of the BVI Constitution, thereby continuing representative democracy through the Government of National Unity. To be clear, Mr. Speaker, the decision at this time is not, I repeat, not to suspend or partially suspend the BVI's constitution. Mr. Speaker, this decision reflects a commitment to democracy and maintaining the dignity of the people of the British Virgin Islands by allowing the Government of National Unity to pursue the implementation of the governance recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry report. Mr. Speaker, the government led by Premier Wheatley has again publicly indicated they're fully committed to governance improvements, and in some cases improvements beyond what was recommended by the report of the Commission of Inquiry. While I've not had the opportunity to speak directly to Premier Wheatley about this decision, I have communicated a message that the Cayman Islands stands ready to assist his government in achieving their governance objectives, and we welcome his government's public commitment to reform. On behalf of the Cayman Islands government, Mr. Speaker, I have passed on to Minister Milling our thanks for the positive, constructive, and carefully considered approach taken by the UK during this process. Mr. Speaker, in closing, we extend to the government and people of our sister overseas territory, the British Virgin Islands, our support and sincere best wishes as they embark on a difficult but necessary journey. We also take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to remind ourselves that we must remain ever vigilant, take nothing for granted, and renew our own commitment to the highest standards of governance and probity in public life. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I have a statement by the Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for approving this statement. Mr. Speaker, I rise to offer a statement about an extremely important program that can help save the lives of our children. Mr. Speaker, Swim Free is a public-private partnership program that is fully endorsed by the government and supported by the three prominent Caymanian families, the Flowers, the Fosters, and Mr. Don Seymour. Swim Free is a curriculum-based program that mandates life-saving water skills for all children in reception through year 2 in the Cayman Islands government education system. Mr. Speaker, this program is unique in that it addresses the lack of access to public swimming facilities for students in our government primary schools. We support this program, Mr. Speaker, because there are statistical and critical assumptions that drive our decision. Mr. Speaker, drowning is a leading cause of accidental death for children younger than 5 years old, and it is proven that most drowning occur within a short distance of 10 feet of safety. It has also been proven that organized swim lessons reduce the likelihood of child drowning by 80%. Mr. Speaker, it is most unfortunate that our government primary schools are unable to offer comprehensive swimming instructions as part of the reception to Year 2 curriculum because of logistics and limited facilities, especially in our outer districts. As I said before, Mr. Speaker, this program is a public-private partnership between the government and the Cayman Islands YMCA, with initial financial backing from the Flowers Sea-Swim Group and other private sponsors. A portable pool would be provided and transported by trailer to each government school campus for 1 month at a time. The pool, which is defined as an independent swimming apparatus, or ISA, is a state-of-the-art mobile swimming pool that is housed within a 40-foot shipping container. It is custom-built by a manufacturer in the United States and features temperature control, ultraviolet light filtration, self-cleaning pumps, along with a retractable cover to prevent unauthorized access when not in use. Mr. Speaker, the unit would be enclosed by safety rails with a maximum depth of 4 feet. Construction of the pool will take approximately 6 months from a deposit being provided. Mr. Speaker, I will now outline the program. For 1 month, each government primary school will have an ISA on campus to be used during scheduled physical education lessons. Instruction will be provided by a qualified learn-to-swim coach. It is proposed that there will be a focused approach of 8 to 9 lessons for every reception class through Year 2 students. The goal will be to teach our children to swim to 10 feet because, as indicated earlier, most drownings happen within 10 feet from the edge of the pool, canal, dock, or capsized vessel. Mr. Speaker, the curriculum will be a collaboration between the Department of Educational Services, Swim Free Advisors, which includes a former Cayman Islands national swim coach who has worked with the United States Olympic team. This program has been adapted from the successful K-Swim early childhood program in the United States. Mr. Speaker, we are blessed in that the Swim Free Advisors will donate their time and expertise free of charge, and as indicated, there are several sponsors, but the main 3 sponsors are the Foster's Group, Don Seymour's and his family, and Frankie Flowers, the Flowers family. Mr. Speaker, they're also offering to assist the Department of Educational Services staff with printed and online materials or live assembly presentations for our parents, teachers, and students to become familiar with the program and ensure a smooth implementation. For that, Mr. Speaker, I am truly grateful. Fortunately, Mr. Speaker, the first round of private funding has been secured with sufficient money pledged to order the pool and to facilitate the program for 1 year. Because it is a new initiative, government had not budgeted it in the last 2-year budget. However, there does need to be adequate buy-in from both sides, and I'm happy to report that that is what obtains. Mr. Speaker, it is proposed that when the new budget is drafted for 2024, the non-staff recurring costs estimated at this time to be $30,000 a year will be transferred to the government. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that is a small price to pay for the lives of saving our children. By that time, the estimated figures for maintenance, teaching tools, and shipping to Cayman would be firmly established. The coaching salary cost will remain with Swim Free, subject to future negotiations with the government. Mr. Speaker, Swim Free stakeholders will continue to be involved in the advisory capacity and provide discretionary financial support as needed to maintain the standards or indeed to advance the program. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would like to say that this is an absolutely fantastic program that will help to build resiliency and build confidence in our young people. And I am sure that in time it can be extended also to teach adults who are also quite apprehensive of water, especially when they can't swim or swim properly. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, this is a program that can help save lives as well, both of those who are taught to swim as well as those that may be able to help who may get themselves in difficulties. We've all grown up with different examples of people perishing in water. Mr. Speaker, I firmly believe that this program will be of great benefit to our children and our community and families at large. It will help save the lives of our precious, not just Caymanian souls, but residents and visitors alike in time, because once we fulfill this dream of a Swim for All policy, Mr. Speaker, we were also, with an unintended consequence perhaps, creating another occupancy where eventually our beaches can be like beaches in St. Pete, that we can have proper lifeguards there and will provide another source of income for Caymanians. So, Mr. Speaker, the government is happy to come on board with the Flowers, Fosters, and Seymour's family in providing this very important private-public partnership, and we look forward for them having a most successful gala tonight, and that for all persons that the Cayman jurisdiction has been kind to reach deep in your pockets so that we won't leave any child behind. I thank you.
We are, at this time, take the suspension for lunch, and we'll be back 2 o'clock.